Has anyone ever said something that hurt you? And even after many years, you still hear those words echoing in your mind as if they were spoken just yesterday? If your answer is yes, then this video is for you. We won't be teaching you how to fight back, but how to stay calm so that no one can touch the peace within you again. Are you truly living your own life, or just reacting to the people who once hurt you? They insulted you once, but if you keep replaying it every day, you're letting them do it for a lifetime. It's time to learn how to stand strong, not with shouting, but with intentional calmness. Not every insult deserves a response, and not everyone deserves to live rent-free in your mind forever. Let me share with you how Stoics respond to hurt, and why that response can set you free forever. Don't seek validation or emotional closure from the very people who hurt you. I want you to picture this. You've just finished a long meeting. Finally, you share an idea, and someone, maybe your boss, maybe a colleague, interrupts with a half joke. That idea sounds a bit outdated. Maybe it worked back in my parents' time. People laugh, a few exchange glances. You force a smile, not to let it slide, but inside, you feel a sharp chill. Later, you drive home in silence, or stand in front of the mirror asking yourself, I should have said something, right? At least to let them know I felt insulted. Have you ever felt that way? I've heard similar stories from so many people, men, women, in their 40s, 50s, even 60s. People who were leaders, family pillars, the most dependable friends. Yet in one moment of being mocked or dismissed, they're pulled back into the skin of a child, standing in front of the mirror, waiting for an apology, waiting for someone to admit they were wrong. But that rarely happens. In fact, it almost never does. Not because you don't deserve respect, but because they never thought they did anything wrong. As someone who has followed Stoic philosophy for over 30 years, I too once believed that recognition from others was proof of my worth. But the more patients I've treated, the more students I've taught, the more human reactions to pain I've observed, the more I realized, when you expect the person who hurt you to be the one to heal you, you're rubbing salt into your own wound. One of my patients, Evelyn, 58 years old, once a deeply respected teacher, experienced this. One day, a younger colleague openly disrespected her in front of her students. Evelyn didn't react at the time, but in the weeks that followed, she spiraled through anger, heartbreak, and then hope. Hope that the colleague would realize their mistake. Hope for an apology. Hope that someday someone would say, Miss Evelyn, that was my fault. Do you know what happened? No one ever came. No apology, no regret, and every single day Evelyn waited for it. She lost a little more of her peace. I want to say this gently, but clearly, the one who hurt you is rarely the one who will heal you. Most of the time, they don't even know or care that you're hurting. They may not be malicious, but they are careless enough to hurt you and irresponsible enough never to apologize. And if you keep waiting for them to realize it, you'll spend the rest of your life in disappointment. I understand. People often say, forgiveness is how you lighten your heart. But I'm not asking you to forgive right away. Not while you're still bleeding inside. I'm only asking you one thing. Don't let your heart depend on their words, whether they come or not. Stoic philosophy teaches us we do not control the actions of others. We only control how we respond to them. And you can choose to respond in a way that makes you stronger, clearer, more self-possessed. What is that response? It is to stop waiting for validation from those who are too blind to see your worth. Because your worth, as a human being, as someone who has walked through the years of life, does not lie in anyone else's hands. It does not lie in an apology you may never hear. It lies in how you lift yourself up every time you are belittled. I want to end this part with a question. If they never apologize, can you still live fully? If your answer is yes, then you've already started living like a stoic. Because calmness does not come from everyone treating you kindly. It comes from not needing them to, in order to keep your peace. If you're listening to these words, maybe while making your morning coffee or driving home after a long day, I just want you to remember one thing. You do not need recognition from those who once tried to put you down. What you need is honesty and respect from yourself. Don't search for closure from them. Open another door for yourself, a door that leads to freedom from expectation and back into peace. 2. Don't let emotions control you. When insulted, I want you to recall a time when you were truly angry, not a small irritation, but real anger. Someone crossed the line, and in that moment, your heart raced, your throat burned, sharp words lined up in your mind, ready to explode. Have you ever felt that? One think most of us, especially past 35 or 40, have been there. But here's what I want you to reflect on today. What happens when we act in that very moment, when emotion is at its peak? I remember a therapy session with a man named Gregory, 54 years old, a businessman, father of 2. He told me about a critical board meeting where a colleague openly blamed him in front of everyone. No proof, no truth, just blame and eyes, waiting for his reaction, and he reacted. Loud, harsh, slamming the table, then storming out. When he told me this, his voice dropped, not because he thought he was wrong, but because he realized he had been controlled. He said, "I didn't react to protect my worth. I reacted because I was hurt, and I couldn't control it." And that is something many of us face. It's not the insult that defeats you, it's how you react to it. Stoic philosophy has taught me something deeply important. Between stimulus and response, there is always a space. In that space lies our freedom. You can't stop people from saying hurtful things, but you can choose not to let their words become the remote control of your emotions. Modern neuroscience even proves this. When we're insulted or feel threatened, the sympathetic nervous system fires up, heart rate spikes, blood pressure rises, adrenaline surges. For the first 90 seconds, emotions are at their fiercest. But if you do nothing in those 90 seconds, the wave settles, and you are back in charge. That's why I often tell my patients, if you can, don't answer anything important when you're angry. Not because you're not smart, but because in that moment, you are not the one steering your behavior anymore. I know, in both Western and Eastern cultures, silence is often mistaken for weakness, but the truth is the opposite. Silence, at the right moment, is the highest expression of self-mastery. Silence is not ignorance. Silence is discernment. It's knowing that not every thought deserves to be spoken, and not every word deserves to come from you. Have you ever let a petty person drag you into an argument that wasn't worth it? And then afterward, you couldn't even remember what they said, but you remembered exactly what you said. In that moment of losing control, the wise, those who are truly seasoned by life, are not different because they know more. They are different because they know when to stop. They don't let fleeting emotions overshadow lasting dignity. If you're watching this, perhaps you're like me. No longer 20, no longer needing to prove yourself in every situation. We're walking through a stage of life where self-control matters more than winning, and peace is more precious than being right. So next time someone hurts you, pause, step back, ask yourself, if I respond right now, am I defending my worth, or am I reacting from a wounded ego? And if the answer is, my emotions are driving me, then you already know what to do. Do nothing. 3. Don't stay silent when you need to speak up. Walk into a room. Someone, maybe a co-worker, a family member, even your partner, has, more than once, said something that stings. They don't shout, they don't openly insult you. It's the quiet sarcasm, the dismissive glance, the subtle way they push you out of the conversation. You notice it, you feel it, but you don't say anything. Maybe you tell yourself, it's not worth it. Or, I'll keep quiet to keep the peace. Have you ever done that? I ask because I've met too many people, especially after the age of 40, living in what I call a false peace. They choose silence to keep harmony, but the price they pay is not peace. It's their self-respect, slowly eroded. One of my former students, Sandra, 61, once said something that has haunted me for years. I don't know when I became so small in my own home. When I asked more, I learned that she had stayed silent for many years. Her son often shouted at her. Her husband brushed off her words as if they were nothing. She never resisted, not because she wasn't hurt, but because she had grown used to enduring. And as I told Sandra, that is not kindness. That is abandoning yourself. Stoic philosophy does not teach us to simply endure. It teaches us to discern when to let go because it is trivial, and when silence itself damages your dignity. You see, people don't learn from the feelings you bury. They learn from the behavior you show. If you stay silent when someone crosses the line, they don't think you're hurt. They think, oh, you can take it, and they'll continue. Not because they are evil, but because you never drew a boundary. I'm not saying you need to yell, argue, or explode. No, grown, seasoned people don't need to shout to prove anything. All it takes is short, firm, calm words, like, I don't agree with the way you just spoke to me, or, next time, I expect to be treated with respect. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself, and you are not obligated to be pleasant to what is harming you. When I was young, I thought patience was the sign of maturity, but the older I get, the more I see this truth. Maturity is not about how many times you can endure. It is about knowing clearly when to endure and when to speak. I once heard a powerful line, you cannot teach others to respect you by staying silent while they hurt you. And I believe that is true. I understand, for many people in middle age, confrontation, speaking up, or making waves is something they want to avoid at all costs. But remember this, sometimes waves are necessary. If they help you avoid a sinking ship, long silence does not protect a relationship. It only allows one person to keep pushing, while the other slowly disappears. Have you ever felt like you were disappearing in your own home, your workplace, or your relationship? If so, then it's time to use your voice. Let me end this part with an image. Imagine you're standing in a forest. Someone keeps stepping closer to you each time. Just one more step. Not obvious, not rushed, but closer. And you don't step back. You don't stop them. One day, you realize they're standing right in front of you. No space left, no boundary. Remember this, people don't cross your boundaries in one giant leap. They test them, step by step, and you teach them how far they can go with your silence. So next time, when someone says something that hurts you, speak. When they do something that makes you feel small, stand tall. When they belittle you, let them see that your silence is not weakness, but your choice of timing. You don't have to raise your voice. You only need the courage to say what must be said at the moment it matters, and sometimes just one clear, calm, but firm sentence can change the way someone treats you forever. Point 4. Don't hold on to insults inside. Why want you to imagine something very simple? Someone, in a passing moment, says something hurtful. Maybe just one sentence. Maybe a dismissive gesture. Then they move on with their life. They sleep well that night. They go to work the next day. They don't remember. They don't think about it again. But you lie awake. You replay that moment over and over in your mind. You think of all the things you should have said, all the ways you could have reacted differently. Have you ever felt that way? I remember one afternoon, during a private session with a woman named Helen, 57 years old, she told me I was insulted for 2 minutes. And then I spent the next 2 years reliving that feeling every time I thought about it. I sat in silence, listening as she explained. It was just one sentence from her sister-in-law at a family dinner, a condescending look. Nothing more was said, but Helen carried that feeling, I'm not respected, into every conversation afterward. It shaped the way she saw herself. She began doubting her own words, holding back her real feelings, and losing her natural confidence. And do you know the saddest part? The person who spoke that hurtful sentence didn't even remember saying it. Stoic philosophy calls this suffering. Twice, once when the event happens, and a second time every time you recall it, replay it, and let it wound you again. But you do have a choice. You cannot erase what was said, but you can refuse to keep it in your heart. Imagine this. Someone comes to your house, carrying a bag of trash, and dumps it right in the middle of your living room, then walks away. Would you clean it up and open the windows? Or leave it there, day after day, letting it take up space, letting it rot and smell, and then wonder, why doesn't my home feel the same anymore? It sounds strange, but that is exactly what many of us do with insults. We keep the trash in our minds, not because we enjoy pain, but because we confuse remembering, so we won't repeat the same mistake, with imprisoning ourselves inside an emotional jail of our own making. I know some will say, but if I don't hold on to it, doesn't that mean I'm letting them off the hook? I understand, but here's the truth. You can remember the lesson without carrying the bitterness. You can set a new boundary without dragging the anger along. This isn't easy. I won't pretend that all it takes is thinking positive. No, letting go is not forgetting. It is choosing not to carry it anymore. I often tell my students, not everyone who hurt you deserves to travel with you every single day. If someone hurt you for 2 minutes, don't let them live inside you for 2 years. Breathe. Write it down if you must. Talk it out with someone. And then put it down. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. One method I often share with people who've been deeply hurt is to imagine writing a new ending. Picture yourself on a boat, carrying a heavy suitcase. Inside are all the words, the actions, the looks that once wounded you. You can't throw the suitcase overboard all at once, but you can open it, take each piece out, acknowledge it, say goodbye, then close it gently and let it drift away. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with forgiving someone. It begins with refusing to let them dictate your mood every morning when you wake up. Ask yourself, am I holding on to someone else's insult as if it were part of my identity? If the answer is yes, then today you have the right to put it down. No one should live in your heart forever unless they make it warmer. 5. Don't use silence as an escape. When what you need is clarity now, imagine a familiar situation. You're in a conversation and someone crosses the line. You hear it clearly, you feel it deeply, but you choose silence, not because you aren't hurt, not because you don't have something to say, but only because you're afraid. Afraid that if you speak, you'll make a mess. Afraid of upsetting someone. Afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of conflict. And so, you smile faintly, change the subject, or quietly withdraw from the conversation. Have you ever done that? I don't ask this to blame you. I ask so that you can listen to yourself, because I used to be that person, and I have sat through hundreds of conversations with people who traded clarity for a false sense of peace. A woman named Carol, 63 years old, once sat across from me and said, I have been silent for more than 30 years, and now I don't even know what I truly think anymore. You see, when silence becomes your default, it slowly strangles the voice inside you. Silence at the right time is wisdom, but prolonged silence is the fading of yourself. Stoicism does not teach us to simply endure. On the contrary, it teaches us when to be silent and when to speak. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic emperors, did not rule by avoidance. He faced the truth, but did so with calmness and clarity. He once wrote, "Speak as one who carries light, with clarity, without noise, without the need to quarrel." I know you've thought that speaking up would hurt others, but have you ever considered this? If I don't speak, am I not hurting myself? And here's the truth. Staying silent too long not only leaves others misunderstanding you, it also makes you begin to doubt yourself. You start asking, am I being too sensitive? Maybe I should endure better. Or, am I simply not important enough to be heard? Let me say this with all sincerity. No one has the right to silence you forever, unless you hand them that right. And you don't need to shout. You just need to speak with clarity, gently but firmly. Think about the last time you walked away from a conversation with a heavy heart. Not because someone hurt you, but because you didn't protect yourself with one simple sentence. It could have been as simple as, "What you said made me feel disrespected," or, "I want you to understand, that's not okay with me." You don't need long explanations. You only need to make it clear that your boundaries exist. Silence is precious, but only when it comes with understanding of yourself and of others. If you are silent only because you fear conflict, that is not strength. That is retreating from your own value. So let me end with a question for you. The one listening right now, the last time you kept silent to avoid conflict. Did you feel lighter, or did you feel like you lost a piece of yourself? If your answer is, "I felt a loss," then you already know the truth. Don't let outer quietness become inner chaos. Don't let others mistake your silence for acceptance. And don't let a lack of clarity slowly turn you into a stranger to yourself. You deserve to be understood, starting with the courage to speak with clarity. 6. Don't carry insults as if they are part of who you are. I want you to sit still for a few moments. Close your eyes, or simply rest in silence, and think of a sentence someone once said to you, maybe a year ago, 5 years ago, or even 20 years ago. A harsh remark a look of disdain, an action that made you feel small. If you still remember it, if you still feel pain when you think of it, then I want you to ask yourself, why am I still holding on to this? I once worked with a man named Thomas, 59 years old. He was an engineer, intelligent, successful, but withdrawn, and often haunted by the feeling of not being good enough. In one private session, he said, "I remember when I was 17, my father told me I'd never amount to anything, and somehow, even after 40 years, I still hear that voice in my head every time I start something new." Does that sound familiar? To you, this story is not rare. In fact, it is the quiet wound carried by millions of adults. They no longer live in the same circumstances, but they still live as the same victim. You see, insult is an external act. But when you let it define your identity, when you shape yourself around words spoken by someone in a careless moment, you are giving them the power to write your life story, and no one deserves that power except you. Stoic philosophy teaches us, it is not what happens to you that defines who you are, but how you respond to it. An insult, no matter how cruel, is just one passage in the book of your life. It is not the title. It is not the final chapter. And it is certainly not your identity. I know some people will say, "I can't forget. I've carried it too long." I understand, but you know what? Some things don't need to be forgotten for you to put them down. It's like a wound on your leg. The scar may remain, but you no longer have to limp, as long as you stop pressing on it every single day. So today, I want to invite you to try something. Write down every word, every sentence someone once said that made you feel unworthy, not good enough, or undeserving of respect. Write it all, then fold the paper and burn it, or tear it into pieces, or throw it far away. Not to erase it from memory, but to tell yourself, I don't need to carry these things as if they are part of me. Who you are is not defined by someone else's words spoken in their worst moment. Who you are is defined by what you choose to hold on to, and what you choose to let go. I want to close this entire journey with an image. Imagine you're walking along a mountain path. On your back is a heavy backpack filled with insults, wounds, moments of silence when you should have spoken, and anger left unspoken. You can keep walking that way, but you can also stop, set the backpack down, and choose to carry only what is necessary: your self-respect, your compassion, and the peace you may have lost somewhere along the years of enduring. Let calmness become your way of life, not as a shield of defense, but as a source of active strength. Now, picture this ordinary scene. You're standing in line at the supermarket. Someone cuts ahead, then they glance back at you, even tossing out a mocking remark. In the past, maybe you would have gotten angry. Your face flushed, you snapped back. You told yourself, I can't let them disrespect me like that. But then, you went home, and the whole day felt heavier, all because of one stranger who lacked decency. Have you ever been in that situation? Let me share this with you, not as some lofty philosophy, but as a practical lesson I've learned over time. Not everyone who makes you angry deserves a place in your mind, and not every battle requires you to fight, just because it invites you in. Stoic philosophy teaches something powerful. If you don't learn to control what's inside you, you will be controlled by everything outside you. And I believe calmness is not avoidance. It is a trained response to the point where you're no longer pulled into the chaos of others so easily. I once spoke with a man named Richard, 65 years old, a retired police officer. He had handled hundreds of tense conflicts. He told me, Calmness wasn't something I was born with. It was something I learned to survive. But later, I kept it. To live right, do you see? There is a profound difference between staying calm to survive and choosing calm as a way of living. Because in the end, you don't need to react to everything. You don't need to correct the disrespectful. You don't need to win every argument. Because you already know this truth. Your worth is not in the louder voice. It is in the quieter strength within. And when you truly master this, you'll start noticing a very real shift in your life. Insults no longer pierce you the way they once did. You no longer feel the urge to fix someone just to feel enough. And most importantly, you feel lighter, freer, more at peace. Now, I want you to imagine this. Someone walks past you and splashes a bucket of dirty water onto you. You have two choices: chase after them, argue, react, and let that stain spread into your mind. Pause, dry yourself off, and refuse to carry it for the rest of your day. That is the choice you always have in every moment of insult. You cannot control who might try to hurt you, but you can control whether you carry them with you in your mind. You can choose to say, I see it, I understand it, but I will not react, because I have chosen calmness as my home. Calmness doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you don't let pain decide how you behave. You respond from a higher place where you are no longer led by ego, but by values. And you know what? None of us walk through life without insult, without hurt, without being misunderstood. But dignity is not defined by what others do to us. It is defined by what we choose to hold on to, what we choose to let go of, and how we choose to move forward. If you've stayed with me until now, I believe it's not just because you want to know how to react, but because you're searching for a deeper way of living, a life with inner order, with boundaries, with self-respect, and with peace. And if that's the journey you are on, then I invite you, click subscribe, not just to receive more videos, but to help keep the flame alive in a community of people choosing to live with depth. Because in a world that is loud, reactive, and easily wounded, we need each other to choose differently, to live calmly, to live clearly, to live not pulled by others, but led by our own inner compass. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, your peace is never something to be bargained.